sometimes I go to pick my son from Sundays when he was younger, and I say, oh, I see this child that I think that the child, needs, an evaluation, that because of the signs they're exhibiting. The Sunday school teacher would tell me that, and so if it's Reverend Cromwell's church, then they would say that, Reverend Cromwell, but say, you understand? How do I tell a member of Reverend Cromwell's church that there's a problem? Because our Reverend is powerful, doing all sorts with us, and so we don't believe that we could have a child under Reverend Cromwell's, leadership with a form of disability. So the teachers will tell you that I can't say it, So then we should train the Sunday school teachers to be able to call the mothers and say that, well, this is not it. But you can seek, I think you should seek a further evaluation. And when the church begins to do that, it opens up, people begin to, come out and say, okay, so I also think this way, I've seen the signs, and now that you are telling me, I think I have to go and see a specialist. But if they come and then they don't hear anything from the Sunday school teacher, or even if they bring it up and the Sunday school teacher helping them to helping us to refuse it. As for us as parents, we also refuse it in Jesus' name. Exactly, without doing any form of intervention. Yes.
Wow, Madam Gifty, thanks for sharing those experiences. Yes. I mean, it touches because I am a children's service teacher myself. And so as you are talking, I'm thinking through, and I teach the very young ones, the tiny tots, so from 2 years to 5 years before they go to class 1. I'm thinking through my class and seeing if I have missed any signs. So thanks for giving us this experience about that. It's important, as you are saying, that we train our children's service teachers and even our mothers, the women's fellowship. There's the issue of stigma with women who have children with disabilities. Sometimes they don't even come to church at all because children's service, we have this, this child is too troublesome. When he comes, he disrupts my class. And so I'm happy when he doesn't come. Yeah. But I think these are things that we can do. Are there any, let me just push on this, are there any training courses available locally? Or is there anything that the church can tap into in terms of training for some of these early identification signals, especially for our mothers and also, as you're saying, for the teachers who teach our children? Is there anything like that available?
Director?
Yes, there are. Yes, there are. There are a lot.
Yes, just a minute. Please let Madam Gifty answer, and then I'll bring you in.
Okay. Yes. So for my organization, for instance, we have a parent training platform where we constantly training parents, look out for what is typical development or in quotes normal, and what is not. And we always are asking Sunday school teachers to join us. We just had our 0 to 5 conference where we invited community healthcare workers, preschool teachers, basically the earliest contacts of children, the 0 to 5, those who work with the 0 to 5 range. So I think that as a church, if we can begin to target these group of people from the mothers that you mentioned, the training is available. And so there's a lot that we can do for them. And also in terms of the 0 to 5 bracket, again, you mentioned that when a mother takes a child that is hyperactive to church, all the stigma and all that. Even in the health sector, when we go, I remember when I took my son for blood works, they couldn't understand how a 5-year-old, I can't remember how old he was, couldn't sit still, and they were giving him instructions, and because he had no physical features of any disability, the lab technician assumed that I hadn't trained him well, that he was a spoiled child. So I think with the hidden disabilities, we need to sort of train everyone that, a child will not have physical features, but they could have conditions like ADHD, they could have conditions such as autism, and we need to be patient with them,
Okay.
So
wonderful. Thank you. Let me go to Max now. We are still looking out for our sign interpreter on the screen. Mr. Zakaria, if you are on, please make sure that you have your video on so we can see the interpretation. Max, please, want to say something, then I'll move on to Mr. Homai.
I just want to thank Madam Oyoka very, very much for that comprehensive display of knowledge and what we need to do.
But Max, can you speak up a bit?
Yes, I want to say that.
Those who join through the listener. Yes. No, that we can't be like, they can't even see us.
Yes,
I get
we can't see you.
We those who are joined through Zoom,
Yes.
they can see us. With the message that we are signing.
Can you put your video on? Your video is off.
Mr. Zachariah, can you put your video on? Your video is not on Zoom.
Yes.
Just the video so that we can see you signing.
Yes. So, Director, basically, I was saying that over the years, we also identified that we have this gap of early detection and identification challenge. And that is why we established the Inclusive Child Development Program. That project was piloted in the North here before it was eventually taken to Accra. So I think that we focused much of our attention on physical disabilities. And so with this session, it is a wake-up call on the church for us to begin to include the invisible disabilities under our inclusive child development strategy. We already have it. The only thing is that we're not focused on invisible disability. And so autism and the rest, we're not focused on them. But I think that today's session is a wake-up call. And I can assure you that we will implement it. We will include
it. I believe in you. You can assure. There's a politician who is called you can be assured or something.
Yes.
Since as if we have to give you that name. Mr. Homaji, I hope you are still with us.
Yes.
Mr. Homaji, if you can hear us, wow, I'm sure that at this point you've heard a lot of the gaps that we have in the policy, as well as some of the very interesting things that the Presbyterian Church of Ghana has done in specific geographic areas on inclusive disability, inclusive, life for persons with disability. And also now you've heard from Madam Ayoka about some of the issues with invisible disabilities. Now, from where you sit, Mr. Homaji, you were a former board member of NACA, in charge of curriculum development. You are a member of the National Steering Committee on Inclusive Education. You are a member of the Ministerial Advisory Board of the Ministry of Education. You are a member of the Technical Working Group on the revision of the Inclusive Education Policy of the Ministry of Education. And you are also currently the National Chairman for the Ghana National Education Campaign Coalition. And I'm sure that at this point you have seen our disability policy. What are some of your thoughts in terms of what the church can do better to ensure that we are aligned to all the international goals on disability, the national goals on disability, and that we are working hand in hand with the states to make sure that we are inclusive? Mr. Homaji, can you hear me?
Thank you so much. Can you hear me now?
Wonderful. I can hear you and I can see you.
Good. Thank you so much for the opportunity. This is very, very interesting session. And I'm happy about the fact that the church has developed a disability policy. I commend the church for that. And the Maxwell has also told us a lot about what the church is doing. Yes. But my surprise a bit is that the church is not sharing this very important information to people to hear and see what is happening within the church. So I will encourage Maxwell and the entire church to share this information so that people will know what the church is doing in terms of disability inclusion. Moving forward, to answer your question, the church can do a lot to ensure disability inclusion when it comes to education, health, and etc., etc. The SDG Goal 4, the SDG 4, that's a sustainable Goal 4, talks about access, equity, and quality education for all children, irrespective of their disability background, social-cultural background, etc., etc. And Ministry of Education has developed disability inclusive disability policy or inclusive education policy, and that policy has been in place for the past 7 years now. And now it is being reviewed. And I have been, by God's grace, I'm part of that review process. The church has a huge role to play in this implementation of this policy so that all Ghanaian children, including children with disability, can benefit. One, we are talking about, Reverend talk about infrastructure being disability friendly. The church has a role to play in that. When they are putting up structures, the church has a lot of schools and a lot of classrooms around. Also, the church can play a role in terms of making sure that classrooms are disability friendly for these children who will go there to access learning. Number two, the church can use the pulpit, because the church has a huge platform, can use the pulpit to educate and sensitize members in terms of disability issues, and in terms of discrimination, in terms of stigmatization. You have already mentioned stigmatization. That's one area that people with disabilities are suffering a lot. The discrimination, social barriers. The church can use the platform or the pulpit to break all those social barriers to ensure inclusion of persons with disability in the society. Because persons with disabilities, they want to participate in the mainstream activities. But always there's this kind of discrimination. Always there is this kind of stigmatization. Parents with children with disabilities cannot even bring their children out. They cannot even come to church with their children with disability because of attitude towards the children. So the church can use the pulpit to sensitize the public, to sensitize the church members, so that they can accept children into the church, into the society, into their schools. The other thing the church can do is also to have dialogue with the policy makers, because the church has a huge platform. The church can have a dialogue with the policy makers, Ministry of Education, other policy makers, have a dialogue with them on disability issues, so that the church will play the advocacy role effectively and strongly to make sure that the policy makers are committed to implementation of disability law and to other disability activities and policies to include disabilities in the mainstream activities of this country. The other thing the church can also do is to support the government when it comes to resources, teaching and learning materials for children with disabilities. The church can also do that to support the implementation of inclusive education policy, because these children need some specialized learning materials, and the church can also help provide some of those materials to enhance effective teaching and learning in their schools. The church can also encourage parents to open up, because we are practicing inclusive education. This policy has come to stay, and we are rolling it out in the country, so that these children with disability can also mainstream. They can go to regular schools and do their learning in the regular schools. The church can also sensitize headmasters, teachers, parents to open up and accept these children in their schools, so that when the children go to their regular schools and learning, there will be no discrimination, there will be no stigmatization, there will be no negative attitude towards them, so that the children will feel at home and learn in their learning environment. The church can also do a lot of media engagement to come out with public sensitization, public education, to make sure that the general public understand persons with disability and accept persons with disability into their fold. The church can also engage traditional leaders. There are some traditional barriers, social cultural barriers that inhibit the development of children with disabilities. Some cultural barriers, as for example, in our community here, we don't allow the persons with disability to do this, persons with disability to do that, albinos, they don't have a right to do this. a whole lot of negative cultural barriers, the church can engage traditionalists, their chiefs, so that they can do away with those socio-cultural negative barriers, to remove all those barriers, so that the children can be accepted, and the children with disabilities can be accepted in their society, in their communities, and give the opportunity so that they can mainstream, they can participate in the mainstream activities to ensure inclusion of persons with disability in their society and their mainstream activities.
Wow.
A lot of things to encourage.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Wow. It looks like the church has a big role to play. So, Maggie, in terms of making sure that a huge and has a huge potential.
Because the president alone, if we put us together, almost 1.5 million across the country. We have about 3,000 schools from KG to university. So it looks like there's a lot that we can do. And thanks for sharing those things. I want to pick your brains on something. In terms of the ways that people call persons with disability, the nomenclature. I know that there is a push to change those names from things that have much more negative stereotypes to much more positive and empowering names, and to ensure that we are inclusive even in the nomenclature, especially in local language. With your work in the inclusive education policy and with NACA, are these some of the things that you are thinking about? Or what are some of the other things that you think that is going to be part of the review of the policy that will be of interest to us as we also implement our own policy?
You see, the disability law and the inclusive education policy is against derogatory language, using the derogatory language to describe persons with disabilities. We are against that because we want to, Jesus, the Master himself, gives the recognition and dignity to humanity. And we expect that all the followers of Jesus Christ and everybody should ensure that there is the dignity for every person with disability. Hello?
You are back online. Yes, you were breaking, but you are back online now. Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Yes, so thank you so much. So I'm saying that I agree with you. I'm saying that the disability law and the inclusive education law policy, they are all against the use of the derogatory language to describe persons with disabilities. So we should not use negative words to undermine the abilities and the potentiality of persons with disabilities. And I'm saying that Jesus, the Master himself, gives recognition to everybody, including the person with disability, healing the blind person. And someone was making derogatory comments. Jesus told the person that no, it's not because the person has become blind because of the parents' sin, but it's to the glory of God. So Jesus was trying to correct the person who was thinking that the person became blind because of sin, because of this, because of that, which is a derogatory comment or negative knowledge attitude towards a person with disability. Jesus corrected that. And that's what we should also do as a church, to make sure that we correct those derogatory comments that people make, we correct those derogatory language that people use for persons with disability, that destroy their confidence, that destroy their image, that destroy their potential and confidence. So we are against negative words, we are against derogatory comments that we use to describe persons with disability. They are normal human beings like any other person.
Exactly.
They need the required dignity and respect from everybody.
Exactly. Thank you. And as we said, disability is not inability.
At all.
Disability is never inability. And so we have to put that into consideration. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, those of you joining us on Facebook,
on Zoom, on YouTube, this is the time for you to ask your questions. If you have any questions for any of our panelists, please, if you're on Zoom, raise your hand and we will call you. If you're on Facebook, type your question into the Facebook chat and we will come back and respond to these questions. We move on to the next round while we wait for the questions. And as I said, today's webinar, if you just joined us, is to celebrate International Day of Persons with Disability 2022. And we have a panel of 4 members, very well equipped to help us with this discussion. Reverend Joseph Ankomah Cromwell, who is a minister of the Presbyterian Church of Ghana and a disability expert. My indefatigable Mr. Maxwell Akandem, who is the Presbytery DSS Director for Upper Presbytery and a disability expert. Madam Gifty Ayoka, who is a certified speech and language therapist and an autism advocate. And Mr. Joseph Achu-Homaji, who is currently the chair for the Ghana National Education Campaign Coalition. And I am Teiko Saba, your host for today. We will continue with the next round of questions while we wait for other people to join us on the call. And I would like to ask Reverend Cromwell, Papa, now that we've had all these conversations, we've looked at the policy, we've looked at practice, we've looked at invisible disabilities, we've looked at the national level policy and things that are happening in the education space. Moving forward, what do you think the Presbyterian Church can add to the work that we are already doing? What do you think we should do more of? What do you think we should do better? And how do we ensure that we are improving accessibility and disability inclusion in the Presbyterian Church of Ghana, so that we can serve as a model for other churches in Ghana and beyond? And as Mr. Homaji said, the church has so much to do, using the pulpit, talking to stakeholders, working at the local level, changing stigma. What can we do? And I'm asking you this as a minister of the Presbyterian Church of Ghana, but also as one of the architects of the disability policy. Papa Cromwell, can you hear us?
Yes. Thank you once again. And I want to just comment on what Gifty was saying, that we should train our children's service teachers or leaders so that they can help identify some of the children who have invisible disabilities and also know how to handle them. And I would say that yes, it's good and fine in that manner, but they are not the only persons who need such training, but the entire church, including the ministers.
Yes.
The ministers who actually are the CEOs of the church.
Yes.
Need to know more about disability issues, because in our system, in our Ghanaian system, we hold our ministers in high esteem. Everything, we go to them and go and discuss our issues with them. But then you see that a lot of them do not have that knowledge in disability issues. And for that matter, would always say, oh, and a call and a whole lot of things. But then if they know what it entails, they can advise appropriately and back it with prayer. And at the end of the day, you will help that mother who has come to discuss her problem with you. But because we do not, we are not much into that, we lack that knowledge, and for lack of knowledge, my people perish. And it is part of our disability policy that the churches train their ministers, their agents, that disability education become part and parcel of our theological formation. And if that is done, a minister who goes to his congregation will make sure that his presbyters know something about disability issues. His choir knows something about, and all the generational groups know something about disability issues, including children's service and JY leaders. I was in a congregation when the church choir, there was this guy in the church choir who had a mental health issue, but they could not contain him in the church choir. They had to expel him from the church choir, and the session endorsed his expulsion. In fact, I was on that session. I did not agree to that, but at the end of the day, as a session, you who have to vote, and they voted, and that person was expelled from the choir. See, and it really hurts me. A church that goes in to mobilize people for the kingdom of heaven, and then because they think that he cannot abide by our rules. When it comes to session and choir meeting, he talks a lot, he insults people, and they think that he should be done away with. And these are some of the things that some of us are pushing for, that the church must train every person to be disability friendly. And some churches have bought into that. Yeah. Some churches, some congregations, or some denominations, I'll say denominations. Church of Pentecost is one. Church of Pentecost is one. In their seminary, yes, every year we go to train their ministers for them. I'll put this up in our church, but it has not been sanctioned. And so, what else can we do? We wait. The church says that, okay, you people should come. And I tell you, I tell you, there are some people who are ready to help in that manner. Wow. How many churches have sign language instructors? You see, even this program, see how you struggled before you got a sign language instructor on board. You see, because some of these things become afterthoughts. Yes. Afterthoughts. We have not planned and coordinated very well in our activities as a church. Masua was talking about a whole lot of things the church is doing in the northern sector. You see, but then there is no coordination. So this thing is in the oblivion. Nobody sees it. Nobody hears it. You see, that is why in the policy, there are two main things that you as the director, you must pursue for the policy to become a living policy. One, there must be a focal person on disability who will coordinate disability issues from the General Assembly level to the presbytery level, local level, and the district level. And then we must also have the disability committee in place. If these things are not done, we will come and sit here next year, and what the church is doing cannot come to light. But then, if we have somebody responsible for all this, you will see that, yes, through that, the church will roll all these programs to every person who matters.
Wow, wonderful. Our time is become, thank you so much.
To become a disability-friendly church. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Kromo. I can feel your passion as we talk about it. Two things, training
and taking action, making sure that we have people in place who will be responsible and who will be called on and who is part of their role to make sure that we are implementing this across. Thank you so much. I'll move on to Max. Max, this most likely would be your last question because of our time. To say that we are doing a lot of things in Northern Ghana. In your view and in your estimation, how do we replicate this in the other presbyteries in the South? Is it that people are not just interested? But now that we have the policy, how do we ensure that the good work that is happening in Upper Presbytery, Northern Presbytery, we didn't even add Go Home projects and all the other work that we are doing, how do we replicate it and have the same successes that you are having in the South as well? Your thoughts on that, please.
We need to have a deliberate strategy to upscale what is happening in the Upper Presbytery to other presbyteries. And I also want to add that the challenge that we have is about budget. If we really want the other presbyteries and the other congregations or districts to do it, we need to let them have a budget allocation at the presbytery level and then at the district level, so that if there's a budget allocation for it, then people will definitely implement, because you cannot sit in your room and implement issues on disability. You need to move out there, because the people are in the interlands, the people are in the institutions that you need to engage. And when you are doing issues on disability, it is about networking and collaborative work. You cannot do it alone. It is multi-sectorial or multi-dimensional intervention program. And so I want to say that we need to have a budget allocation, because I want to say that people in Ghana here, people have traveled from Nigeria, people have traveled from Burkina Faso, Pakistan, to Sandema, to Garu, to learn about the best practices that we are doing. And then today, they are doing better in their countries. And so I think that we can do, if we have a deliberate policy plan, we can do it. So this is what I can say for now.
Thanks
and
for sharing.
I want to say that with respect to the inclusive child development program, we can begin from that point.
Yeah.
To see how can the inclusive child development program play a facilitative role in ensuring that this disability policy works, especially she was part of the program. We can look at it from that perspective, so that at national level, then we can see how we can scale it up to all the districts and all the presbyteries. This is my
thank you.
Thank
you so much. Mas, I know you have so much to give, but because of time, we had to.
Yes, a lot. That's why I have a lot. That's
yes. And in fact, for the past, I know that at least for the past 20 or so years, you have been involved in the CBR program. You have grown it, you have nurtured it, and it has happened. But it's because there's always been a budget. It's important that we put money where our mouth is. And the question is the church willing to do that? Because even as Reverend Cromwell said, if we have to make our church buildings disability friendly, we have to change some of the structure that is there. So thanks for sharing this. And I'm looking forward to a point where all the other presbyteries would pledge to having at least one CBR cut across the country. And I think that is where we'll know that, yes, the church is working hard. World Health Organization. Okay. Wow. That's the future of disability development. Thank you so much for sharing. Madam Gifty, I'm coming to you now. You have told us about what we can do as a church, training our staff, training our children's services,
me inclusive, our women, and all the other things. How do we now support the children themselves?
What are your thoughts and any recommendations for us moving forward? We note that now there's a gap, there's a lacuna in terms of invisible disabilities. What are some of the suggestions that you have for us moving forward? When we meet again next year, what do you want to see that we have done differently? Your thoughts on that, and any final comments that you have.
Therapy, they would need speech therapists. So your health facilities should have the numbers of some of the facilities that offer these services, because parents usually don't know where to go to. Where do I get help? Okay, you're saying that my child, could be having a condition like this, but where do I go to for a diagnosis, and where do I go in for help? So we should begin to have a directory of where the parents can seek help and go for therapy. And also obtain other supports. Then at the teacher training level, I'm glad you mentioned that the Presbyterian Church has a lot of schools, and also you have a training college. Actually, my sister attended the one in the Kropon. And so we need to begin to add it to the, so for instance, autism should be treated as, you should train the teacher on autism, managing autism. There's research that shows that if a teacher is just trained on disabilities and not specifically on managing children with autism, they are not likely to be able to help a child on the spectrum, or a child with dyslexia, or a child with ADHD. So teacher training, we need to look at the curriculum again to include specifically training them on hidden disabilities. And that will solve most of our problems at the early year center, or even at the the schools. Then our Reverend spoke about the church, being inclusive of people that begin to exhibit some of the signs that he mentioned. So let me mention that children with hidden disabilities like autism and ADHD, they are the smartest people you can have, and that is where the denial and the witchcraft thing can be alluded to. Or people will begin to say this one is witchcraft, because they would watch someone play the piano. You won't teach them, and they will play everything, and then within the next 5 minutes, they are the one destroying all your flowers in the church.
Yes.
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 Please go
ahead.
So they would read without being taught how to read. I know they would. Yes. So we've met some that during assessment they are reading our assessments, and the parents will tell you that they've never been to school. They are mentioning words like accommodation and all sorts. They have never been to school. Yes. We call it hyperlexia, and they still have autism, or they still have a condition. So that is why hidden disabilities is really complex. So they are wondering how this man is playing the piano is good, and the next minute he's insulting the choir master, So there are days when I get goats. The whole week my son is calling me a goat in this house. Then I'll say, why, you're insulting me. Then I'll say, Mommy, sorry. Or sometimes he will say it and turn back and say, I wasn't talking to you. The thought was directed at me. You understand? So they will do all sorts. They are the smartest and all that. And on the other side are the behavior problems, the social skills. They can't work with people. And that is where we need to begin to bring society's attention to. And I'm glad the Reverend mentioned that. So I think these are the areas that I would want to, when we meet, and even send people out there to go and train as speech therapists, to work, in the schools and,
Wow.
Then also, I think what we as much as we give it out for free, but if not, we've tried to minimize that parents can use to monitor their child's growth. I mean, this is something that in the ideal world they are now doing it because we want to detect early. And so we need an early detection tools in the various hospitals. And I think Reverend Cromwell said that the church can take the lead, and governments will learn from the church. And I'm glad that the Presbyterian Church is having this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Gifty. Thanks for sharing such practical
and easy to do steps. We already have the training institutions. Add that to the curriculum. Let us see how we ensure that we are able to identify the children early and support them, because there's a window that we can be able to support them through. Thank you very much. Mr. Achu Homaji, this is your final question. Once again, for you, because of where you sit, policy level, very high, focusing on all types of education policy for children, and the work that you are doing with the Ministry of Education. As you know, and as I said, the church has 3,000 schools across the country. Our children's service takes up to about 500,000 children in each congregation every Sunday. What would be your, you've already told us all the things that we can do. The church can do this, the church can do that. Who are the key stakeholders that we can work with to be able to implement these things that you have said? And what do you want to see the church become in the next 5 years? Mr. Homaji, if you can hear me. And then any final thoughts that you have for us as the Presbyterian Church of Ghana as we implement our disability policy.
So Maji, I think you are muted. So if you could unmute. Yes, we can hear you now. That is correct. You are loud and clear.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. First, I want to assure Madam Gifty that the training program is talking.
Mr. Omaji, your line is not too clear. Can you put off your video so that we can have the data go into the voice? Your line is not clear.
Don't come.
So can you put off the
video?
Yeah,
we are not free.
So that we can hear you. At this point, we are unable to hear you at all. While we wait for Mr. Homaji to come on screen, we have two comments or questions from our viewers who are joining us online.
Mr. Stephen Azandem says, Max, please, what is CBR? Explain to us. I believe Mr. Akandem has done justice to that question. He's told us about the community-based rehabilitation and the work that they have done with persons with disability, persons with visually impairment and hearing impairment. So, but if you want more information, please contact Mr. Maxwell Akandem, who is on the screen now, so that we can share some more information with you. You can also contact my office at the head office, DSS Director's Office, and we will share more information on the CBR with you. I'm looking at the time, Max, so I know that you want to speak, but because of time, we would want to go. And then Agnes Amma also says, that's very, very important, making disability issues part of the theological formation for agents. And she goes on to say ministers and catechists under training. So not just only the ministers, but also catechists under training. And we hope that that will trickle down to the presbyters, to the leaders of the generational groups, and to other groups in the churches. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we are still waiting for Mr. Edem, Mr. Homaji to join us. I believe he has just dropped off the call. We would be bringing our conversation to a close at this point. These are my key takeaways from the conversation that we have had. One, the Presbyterian Church of Ghana has a disability policy in place. The focus is on the fact that it has it. And Papa Cromwell was silent about how it has been implemented. But he went ahead to say that we need to ensure that we have the disability committee set up, and we need to ensure that there are focal persons on disability on every level, at every level of the church, across the church so that they are held responsible for the work that we are doing, or the work that we will do. Number two, in the Upper Presbytery, there's a lot of work going on disability, and Mr. Akandem spoke extensively on that, and I believe that there's even more that he did not share with us. And this work has changed the lives of thousands and thousands of women, children, and men who hitherto would not have had that access to life. And I'm aware that there are some persons with disabilities that the church has trained to become teachers, to have master's degrees, to become ministers of the gospel, to become members of parliament and honorable assembly members in northern Ghana, and this can go on. The question is, how do we replicate this in our churches in the south? And the answer is that we need to be conscious about it. We need to budget for it. And we need to network with the right people to make that work. Madam Azoka, thank you so much for sharing your story with autism, the invisible disabilities, which is the theme for this year's International Disability Day. And for us, I think one of the things that we have learned is that the church has to take invisible disabilities seriously. We've also learned that there is a window. If these disabilities are seen early, they can be addressed in a way that supports our children and the way that they can live their lives further on. We will pray, and we are a church, and so we will pray. But our Lord God gave us also our minds to also be able to think and be critical and be analytic. And therefore, looking for medical healing or other forms of healing is as important as the spiritual healing that we will look for our churches. It's about us not putting our heads in the sand and feigning ignorance, but acknowledging that these things are part of us as society and picking it up and running with it. And Mr. Homaji, thank you so much for your time, for sharing with us what the church can do. And you kept on saying it, the church can work on the disability. We can use the pulpit to sensitize people. We can dialogue with policymakers, networks, so many things that the church can do to ensure that we are able to implement our disability policy and improve accessibility and disability inclusion. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow members, Presbyterian Church members, other members who have joined this call, I'm grateful for your time. You have spent an hour and a half of your time with us this morning. I know you have learned something new. We look forward to engaging with you more next year, 2023, as we take the disability policy of the Presbyterian Church of Ghana seriously, as we implement it to the letter, and as we ensure that it helps us to be able to identify our congregants who need support while they are on this earth, and we prepare them for heaven as well. Thank you very much. And I would like to say thank you to my panelists once again, the Reverend Cromwell, for joining us. And thank you so much for sharing the work with us. Maxwell Akandem, always passionate, always on point. Thank you so much. Madam Gifty, for your thoughts and your actions. And I'm sure that we'll come back to you again for this training that you are talking to us about, so that we can do it for the people who need it in the church. And my own chairperson of NEC, Ghana National Education Campaign Coalition, Mr. Homaji, for sharing what the church can do within the policy circles. I remain your moderator for today's event, Teiko Saba, National Director, Development and Social Services. Asumdwen Kamunina. Papa Cromwell, if you're on the call, please give us a prayer and the benediction.
For your own people, because disability is universal. It affects everyone, and that is why this afternoon we want to see how best we can serve your people. Lord, grant us the grace.
They do me air conditioning.
Grant us the power. Grant us the strength. Grant us the wisdom that in all this we will glorify your name. That we will leave no stone unturned and you will leave no one behind as we propagate the gospel. Lord, grant the church the needed resources, financial resources, material resources, human resources to pursue this agenda. That next year, when we meet again, the story will be great and we will have a lot to tell concerning the work you have given us. Now, with the peace of God that surpasses all understanding, keep your body, soul, and spirit safe till the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And do have a lovely day. Bye-bye. Meet on the other side.
Yes, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Max.
Boni aye ma ebusuna ye basenya ye ti sefa ye ni boni ikacheye nachi yen free ati Boni aye ma ebusuna ye basenya ye ti sefa ye ni boni ikacheye na jen free ati Mobrohu nunya mi jame odima ka chemi sa sempa yichi mi rema mi ji die nije mi krada Makano riha bibio yesu dimagine mi yesu dini modano abetu wani ina Mikawami dimi wura somoro ipi bimara na se o beda mikawa kami huda mimya Mikawa Nasce